Hey everybody, it's John here with National Sports Entertainment, and it's past 2 a.m., so that means I'm wide awake and ready to do my video. And I promise I don't do it on purpose. I just genuinely am an insomniac, so the little times I do get to sleep, I'll fall asleep at something like 5 in the morning, and then I'll sleep through the day. But anyway, I did want to go into a few things. We went into the Niners game. I wanted to go, before I started, I really wanted to just sit back in awe and give Aaron Judge credit for his very organic and not scripted 60-second home run. Mr. 99 deserves all the credit for the Yankees now being 99-62. Again, very not scripted. Just like the not scripted home run against the Blue Jays, where the Yankees that were 95-59, Judge hits a home run for them, and Coolio dies at 59. That was his tying home run. So yeah, and if you've seen my Judge videos, then again, I never claim to be 100% over the target, and that's why I don't always rely on gematria and stuff, but I do think there's symbolism, and I think this one they just shoved in our face. Even I didn't think they'd be ballsy enough to do it at 99-62. You know, the starting pitcher was the same pitcher who pitched in the last series where he hit the home run. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, and the number 9 again, strikeouts. And again, you see 9-5 a lot. In the first game of this doubleheader, the total score was 9, 5-4, so 9-5. Again, which is the date he had hit his, or it was their record when he had hit his tying, when Coolio died. So I do find all that interesting, but putting that aside for now, I wanted to go into narratives, things on the field that have changed this year, as well as teams that I think are going to be red herrings versus spoilers versus chosen teams. Because knowing playoff teams really is going to give us a prime indicator of who's going to win these playoff these primetime matchups. And it really, if you look at the metrics of the past, playoff teams cover the spread at a very good rate. So if we know this, we can really exploit that metric. Now, I wanted to go into a couple things on the field I noticed that they have changed. If you guys remember, a few years ago they started the phantom pass interference. And in this article, they're even pointing out themselves how bad and flagrant it was. This is just one game, one example. And it even became a GIF here. And it got so bad that fans were all calling it out. So one thing I noticed was our friend disappeared. He just went away. He was called out for his bullshit, so he's gone. There's no more phantom pass interference. But he was replaced, and nobody seems to question how these two things just got replaced. And he was replaced with the flagrant secondary player tackling the wide receiver despite having a better angle on the ball. So now instead of the ref having to call a non-penalty, this guy in the secondary just creates an obvious penalty. So they get the same result they want, but now instead of yelling at the refs and it being a black eye on the league, people can just kind of redirect that anger to the guy in the secondary, or fans will murmur to himself like, yeah, he did get him, And there's not going to be this obvious reaction when they are throwing these penalties. So there's no more pass interferences that weren't. Instead, we just have very smart, apparently, they're supposed to be smart, players in the secondary deciding at the very last minute that they're going to play the player instead of the ball, even when they have better angles. And this ties into another thing I noticed with the referees. You'll notice, instead of them throwing the flag, they will wait and they will get confirmation that there was a catch or if he didn't make the catch, and then they will throw their flag. Now, their penalty shouldn't change. I mean, they see pass interference, that flag should come out. So the fact that they are waiting to see if he caught the ball, no flag, again, it just makes it more obvious. And then the last on-field thing I wanted to go into before we went into some of these teams and the narratives around the teams is calling out their own bullshit. And this was commented basically to me by Paul. He brings a lot of insightful things to me. And he essentially brought up the point that, because I said I thought Joe Buck and Theismann were the best games to pick because they're the worst offenders as far as giving away a game. So if you're live betting on any game they call, basically 3 plays in, you'll know who's going to win because they'll be gassing up one player or they'll be honing in on a relevant injury. So, but he brought to my attention that the Mannings are even more revealing, and that they will actually, like, if there's a bullshit, ridiculous call or just a horrible missed assignment, they're the first ones to point it out. And honestly, if I was a sleazy league that cheated games, this is probably what I would do. It's the best optical way to go about it, because they're just addressing it right away. And now it looks like all these guys, these credible people, quote, credible people that work as analysts because they played the game, they're calling it out right away. It's almost a reverse, it's like a Jedi mind trick way of getting people's attention misdirected, where really, again, it's not being explained why these players are doing these things. Manning just screaming about it kind of makes people like, okay, at least at least Manning saw it, right? So those are some of the things I've noticed. Now, some narratives around teams. And this is important because, again, this is like setting up WrestleMania. This is the road to WrestleMania. We're going to have our Royal Rumble winners. Those are going to be our teams that get their buys. And we're going to have our underdogs, or people that win matches they shouldn't, etc. But we can tell by the narratives who they want competing for the Super Bowl ring. Obviously, teams like Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, they're your obvious calls because they have the most marketable quarterbacks. So we can just sort them away as they're going to the playoffs. Chiefs, yes. Baltimore, yes. Cincinnati's, I could honestly see them just missing, but I say yes on them. And I'm just giving you a rundown on the playoff teams. Rams are getting back in there because, of course, they're going to have the Rams and Niners in there. And we can just look at what they're doing with each team. Then we're going to look at the teams that are definitely not going anywhere. Steelers, Texans. And again, it's because they're low-market teams that don't have any players that are draws. Browns are going to be pretty close, so they're going to keep it close. Same with the Chargers. Lions out. Patriots out. And it's not just because of their record. It's because of their players. They got Chark Jr. on the Lions, but really they don't have much there. Saints, I'm not going to rule them out, honestly. I can see them wanting to push Jameis versus Brady in prime time, maybe even give him a win. So I'm not going to say anything on the Saints yet. But my point is, the reason I'm going to playoff teams and not playoff teams is my number one metric. Panthers, not a playoff team. My number one metric in determining this is against the spread. But teams that are against the spread and are playoff teams, so teams that made the playoffs, if you notice, against the spread, it's very nice. Their record is very, very high, and it's just an easy pick. So if we know Tampa Bay is going to make the playoffs, and we know that they are 0-2 against the spread right now this year at home, we have a much better than 50-50 chance by picking Tampa Bay in this game to cover the spread. Just because of historically, teams that have done well against the spread, there's a couple outliers, but even the outliers don't finish like 1-6. They'll finish. This year was interesting. Atlanta had a very bad year at home. I think they finished 7-9. But you're not going to see playoff teams finish poorly against the spread at home. So if we know this, and we know there's a handful of teams, like I said, like the Bucs are one of them. I think the Bills might be. I'm not sure. We can look right at it. There's a couple of playoff teams that have not covered the spread at home. So when we know this, Tampa, Jets probably not making the playoffs. So Pittsburgh, same. Baltimore. So Baltimore and Tampa are two great picks moving forward for our sequence. Because I bet you, if over the next 2 weeks, let's just say we bet 25 on Tampa, they don't cover. The next week, double that up, they're covering. We did the same with Baltimore. And this is the historical trends I've been trying to go over, where we can go back. I don't do 2020 because it's half a year. So, I mean, you're not going to get the same. I mean, still, we had nobody that was winless or undefeated. But it's not as big of a sample. But here we go back. And this is just as home team. You'll see the top teams in 2019 that were in the playoffs. Same teams. Very well at home against the spread. So this is just one of the metrics I do use. And again, that's the reason narratives are so important. Because in football, it's all about narratives. And again, we went over the Niners narrative. We went over the Chiefs. We went over all the different narratives of the games. So Bengals-Ravens is one I find interesting. And I like the over in this game. The reason I like the over is because the Bengals have not hit on an over all year. And again, you will not see a team ever go a season where they don't cover an over or an under all year. They will do very poorly on one, like 5-12. But they're not going to just cover one or the other. So, knowing that, we see that coming into this game, Cincinnati is 0-4 against the over. Very poor record. And I think for this type of game on prime time, these teams are not established like the Niners and the Rams as two, maybe in 2000, but not now. They're not two power run teams with hungry, feisty defenses and a few weapons. These are two up-tempo teams, and on prime time, they're going to want the two top guys, two of the top draws in the league to look really well. So, I expect Lamar to have a few touchdowns, and I expect Joe to have a few just by themselves. So this one, I like the over a lot. And again, it's just using that metric. And then for the same reason, and this was brought to my attention as well, I like the Bucs. I really do. The reason being 8.5. Again, a lot of people are going to see that and say that's too much. It's too nice. I'm taking the Falcons. Falcons are 4-0 against the spread. Someone brought this to my attention. I knew the Bucs were 0-2 at home against the spread. But then when I think this was Paul too, but he told me that they're 4-0 against the spread. The odds of, again, a team like the Falcons starting off 5-0 against the spread, the Bucs starting off 0-3 against the spread, and this bet not being a trap, I don't think those things are all coincidences. So here, I really like Tampa Bay. And we're going to do our official picks. There's one, like I said, there's one game on Wednesday. It's a college game. I liked it at first. We might bet that one. To be quite honest, it's an against the spread one, but it's Colorado State, and I honestly can see them losing another game and starting 0-5 against the spread. So I'll go into that one. Like I said, all bets that we make, I'm going to keep showing you, but we're just going to wait because what happens is, like last week, I got in on the Saints at 3. The line moved to 4.5 or something. So the lines are always going to move. A lot of cases, it's going to move in our favor. So that's the only reason I don't pick games at the beginning of the week. But the Thursday game, obviously, tomorrow we'll lock that in. But those are just a few games that I like. And again, it's all narratives. Tom Brady is not going to put over a quarterback that they just don't see anything in that being Mariota. He's not a marketable quarterback. He's on the road. Again, a lot of people will be watching this game. And again, it's all about ratings. It's who can draw. You have Patterson's about the only guy that can draw on the Falcons. And he's on the injured reserve. So, yeah, I like the Bucs here. I think they definitely cover that spread at home because of all those reasons. I think, again, I do think they're going to push the Brady meltdown narrative. But, again, he doesn't have to have 5 horrible games in a row to push that narrative. They can easily win this game, cover the spread, and then just lose to a more likely team like the Saints or something. So they don't have to, like I said, lose every game, but I think they're going to continue that narrative. And that's all, like I said, that's all this is narratives. So I just wanted to get out a couple that I do like off the bat, being the over on this Bengals game, and I do like the Bucs to cover the spread. And then for Thursday, at a glance, to be honest, I was leaning Colts off the bat. I really thought it made sense. And I just want to reassess everything to see if they're not trying to push Russell. Russell's still a draw. Let's not forget that. So if he plays injured and is able to, quote, will his team to victory, then, again, it's just going to get people pumped up for the playoffs. So I can honestly see this one having close to public money only because if people think Wilson's hurt, they're going to bet differently. And if they're trying to tell narratives, what narrative are they telling? And if you guys have ideas in the comments, you can let me know. Are they trying to push the Wilson's getting better each week narrative, like Jimmy G, getting adjusted to the system and he's banged up, but he's going to fight through and win? Or are they pushing just, this is a Vegas trap, and then they want us all to pick the Broncos, only for Matt Ryan to put on a clinic? So I'm curious what you guys think. I think they're not going to let, if he's playing, even injured, I don't think they're going to let Russell look too bad on Prime Video, but I could be wrong. If the Colts had a young quarterback up and coming, then I would 100% pick that young and up quarterback, just like I picked Jimmy G versus Stafford. Here, you have two old quarterbacks that are on their way out. So who's getting put over? Pittman Jr. maybe? So I just have to look more into it. I was leaning Colts to begin with, and then I was thinking, now the Broncos also, they won in prime time last week. So do they win 2 in a row? Usually I would tend to say no, and this would be a good game for the Colts. But it's really close for me, to be honest. So I'll go more into that in its own video. I don't want to take up too much time, wasting you guys' time. But you can let me know what you think of that one. But these are the Sunday ones I like right off the bat that just jump out. Another one that jumped out to me was the 14-point game, where we have Buffalo, I think it is, giving up 14 points. Yeah. And I think this is a college spread. To me, this is a college spread. So I don't see how they can justify this 14-point spread because, again, as good as the Bills are and as crappy as the Steelers are, you're not going to see a 14-point spread, no matter, or even something even close to that. That even when you have a much better team at home versus a shitty team, we have 8.5 here with the Bucs Falcons. Now, again, you can argue the Bills are a better team than the Bucs right now, and I guess the Steelers are a little worse than the Falcons. But again, even in the NFL, this is honestly, you guys can correct me, this is the highest spread I've seen in years. I've seen 10.5. I've seen it get to 11, 12. 2 touchdowns is such a high spread. I feel like a lot of people are going to say, well, gosh, even with a 9th-string quarterback, the Steelers should be able to cover 14. And I think the Bills cover. Like I said, I think they're only 1-1 at home against the spread. And most of your playoff teams are going to finish their seasons with a much better record against the spread. So when we know these things, they are 1-0 against the spread. I still think it's a Vegas trap, and they improve it to 2-0. You'll, like I said, Detroit here, 3-0. So we know over time that's not going to hold. So when we know these little metrics, I know it seems minute, but then it turns a 50% into like a 55. And then if we know the narrative, makes it about a 60. So now we're not just picking games because this team should win because they're better. We're picking them because of all of the different anomalies that stick out to us. So yeah, like I said, I never like to make anything too long-winded. I just did one. I wanted to go into Judge. I wanted to go into a couple games for the weekend that I do believe to be traps. And like I said, of course, I'm going to deeper dives into them once I'm able to watch all the analysis. And yeah, let me know if you noticed those things too this year. The refs picking up flags, the blatant, like I said, the tackling in the end zone instead of the referee throwing the pass interference. The telegraphing of the bullshit, because they sound like small things, but just like wrestling, if you understand the little nuances, then it's very easy to know who's going to win matches. Only I honestly think wrestlers do a much better job at hiding it. These guys need to learn from the wrestlers because they're able to pull it off in front of a live crowd that's looking at every move, and they're able to do it without people even noticing. Meanwhile, these guys are with pads on and everything. They're not able to pull off pretty believable moves. So yeah, I noticed these things with the officiating, essentially now collaborating with the other team instead of just doing their job, and I think it's to deflect from them to the secondaries. Some other, again, I'm going to do more narrative videos. Another thing I find interesting is Tua. I went into a video on him being injured, and this is another narrative I'm noticing around the league. It's these backup quarterbacks coming in, and in some cases it's for a few weeks, but it just seems that every team's quarterback's injured this year. It's a normal thing now, even though they're more protected than ever before. And the thing, again, it's all about marketability. So Tua is more marketable than Teddy. That's just a fact. So I don't know why they're doing this narrative. I knew they were going to go this way, where they're going to basically attack the league for being reckless and come off self-righteous. And sure enough, like the day after I dropped my video, Shannon Sharp's calling for Goodell's head and all these different things. So the injury narrative is interesting. You got Yance, who's out for the 49ers, and it's causing a Jimmy G comeback story, which, again, Troy Aikman and Joe Buck told us vividly. They were talking all about how they showed the pictures of him hanging his head and how he thought he was done, but, he had the will and the resiliency to come back and fight, and now, who knows, he might take him to the Super Bowl. So that's his narrative. He's hurt. And with a lot of these teams, Dak's hurt, and they're saying, oh, well, they're undefeated with Cooper Rush. What do you do there? Even though Dak just got a big contract. Again, I really don't see them doing that with Jacoby Brissett, but it's not doing terrible. Watson's got a big contract, of course, but it's just around the league. Now at the Patriots, their backup just almost beat the Packers. It's on. It seems like 6 out of I'd say 6 to 10 of the NFL teams right now have an injured quarterback, and half of them, it's debatable who's better, the injured or the starter. Jameis just got banged up. We'll see how Dalton does this week at home. Nobody had thought they had a prayer in that game, and Dalton kept it to a field goal that people think they were robbed out of. So I'm just saying, these narratives, they're not an accident, all these injured quarterbacks. I think these teams are testing out who's marketable, who's not. And in some cases, I think people do get banged up and they need to pull them out for a few weeks. But it makes it where you can explain away some of these teams that should cover that won't. For example, this neutral game here with Green Bay, Daniel Jones being injured is a very easy way to explain why Rodgers is ultimately going to easily win this game by probably 21 points or something. Again, it's all about narratives. And again, this is brought up in my comments. We were talking about this for a long time. The narrative here, let me find actually, because he told me the channel of the person that brought up that they're going to make Rodgers look good in London. Here it is. So you can see we were talking about this for a long time. It's Paul brought it to my attention. And apparently he said Smoke Man Joe had brought up that because basically they're in London, they're going to want Aaron Rodgers to look like the best guy that's ever been there. He's pointing out how he hasn't been there in 10 years. And these are the things that the NFL does. Okay, it's all about, like I said, marketability. So it's like when Undertaker or Goldberg goes to Saudi Arabia and they squash one of the best tag teams that would not lose here in the States, but they go overseas and they do the job because these guys want to see Undertaker win. They don't care how old he is. So it's just interesting. I'm curious to check him out. I haven't yet, but it seems like he looks at narratives, and that's what is so nice. That's the most refreshing thing. It's nice when people say like, oh yeah, you were right about this, but it's even more refreshing when someone's like, you know what, I was watching this and I noticed this narrative, because it means that it means dozens of us, hundreds of us, thousands of us are waking up and seeing that it's all choreographed and everyone's coming to their own reasoning. They're noticing it because it's running rampant. So I didn't want to go too long-winded, but I didn't want to make a bunch of separate videos just for the sake of making them. I figured I would cover everything I could, essentially, from just going over Judge to a couple of the teams that stick out to me this week. Green Bay -8 I like, and some of the narratives that I saw, and just some of the not so subtle changes that I've noticed with the officiating and the players. So like I always say, if there's any particular games you do want me to go into, I will. I'll be officially locking in picks, like I said. For Thursday, I'll be locking in tomorrow. I'm not decided if we're going to play the College State game. It's an interesting story. Basically, the old coach for Nevada left. He went to College State, took about like all their best players, Colorado State. I think I said College State. I don't know why. I'm in Colorado State. But yeah, so he took all their players. He went to Colorado State, and they've been awful this year. Now he's returning to Nevada to play them. I did like them for the simple fact that Again, they're 0-4 against the spread, but they're one of those teams that are that shitty that they might finish, with 1 or 2 wins against the spread. So this one I wanted to stay away from, even though I do like the against the spread. So, I mean, if you really wanted action tomorrow and you want to bet, I would have to pick Colorado State before Nevada to cover that spread. But I'm probably not going to play this one, but we might. I just wanted to go into why it's not a layup for me, despite it being an 0-4 against the spread team. Again, with really shitty teams, they can explain away them not covering a lot of spreads. So yeah, like I said, just drop any particular games in the comments if you want them. And also, any insight I always love. I love any kind of insight because, again, the whole thing is to learn. And the more stuff that somebody notices and tells somebody else about, then we can it's like a think tank. Then we can see through the bullshit and make the best picks each week. So happy earnings, like I said. I always appreciate all the love and the support. And it's cool that we all notice this is nothing more than not the National, Football Federation at this point, football of entertainment. So take care all.